Ever since I was a kid, I've always had two nagging insecurities about my physical appearance. The first was my height. I always thought of myself as being too short. And the second was my nose. I always thought my nose was too big. These insecurities followed me around ever since I was a kid, all the way through my teenage years up until college. And one day I went to a lecture, and the speaker gave a talk on the power of self-love. And he talked about the importance of embracing our peculiarities and our distinct idiosyncrasies as unique manifestations of beauty. Most people may have heard that as a bunch of fluff, but I really took that message to heart, and I pondered the ramifications for my personal life as I walked back to my dorm room. And when I got to my room, I did something that I didn't tell anybody about for a long time. I had a conversation with myself. I apologized to my body for condemning it and criticizing it. And I made a pact with myself to end the pattern of self-hate and devote myself to the practice of self-love and self-respect. So not more than a day later, I'm walking across campus heading to class. And from the distance, I see this guy who's crouched over, looking at me really intently. There was nothing subtle about it. He was definitely staring at me. And so I'm walking, and I keep him in my peripheral vision. And as I sort of get to a point where I'm about to pass him up, he's like to my left. He says, "Hey, you. Stop right there." And I turn around and see who he's talking to. He says, "I'm talking to you." And he moves towards me. And he gets in my face. And he says, "Today is your lucky day. Let me tell you something. When I was downtown, I saw a young man rob an older woman and take her purse in broad daylight. And he looked exactly like you. And when I saw you, I was ready to pull out my phone, call the police, and confront you. But something told me, take a closer look, double check, make sure you've got the right guy." And so I was looking at you and staring, and I thought to myself, well, this guy's kind of short, but he still looks like the guy. I just need to get a closer look. And he says, "And that's why I told you to stop." He says, "I'm sorry to scare you, but I just really had to get a look at you. And when I moved close to you and I saw your face, the first thing I thought was, my gosh, this guy has a big nose." He said, "I knew it couldn't have been you." He says, "So this is your lucky day, man." He says, "If you were just a little bit taller and had a smaller nose, you'd be in jail right now." I mean, who would have thought the very attributes that I took as evidence for my ugliness would be the very thing that would, no pun intended, bail me out. One of the most awesome things about life to me is that no matter how accurately or definitively we take our perceptions of reality to be, there's always another angle from which things can be seen. Every perspective, every paradigm is open to challenge. And all of our familiar ways of doing things, knowing things, seeing things, going about things, all of that can be interrupted at any moment by an experience or by an epiphany that challenges us or forces us to broaden our horizons and open our minds to new ways of seeing things, new ways of doing things. I had coffee with a friend last night that I hadn't seen in 10 years, and we were talking about art and just the value of aesthetic education, and he quoted Leonardo da Vinci, and he said, Leonardo da Vinci said that perspective is the rein and rudder of painting. And I like that quote. And I like to borrow that and extend the application of it and say that perspective is also the rein and rudder of education. How we see the meaning and value of education determines how far our education can take us and how well that education can prepare us, not only for the world we currently inhabit, but for the world that's emerging right before our very eyes. My professional life takes place on the intersection of education and entrepreneurship. I'm the education director for a program called Praxis, and I describe Praxis as an academically infused apprenticeship. It's a program where we facilitate academic and professional experiences that are designed to help cultivate the entrepreneurial spirit. Damon John, who many of you may know from the show Shark Tank, I know him as the founder and creator of FUBU, said, "We're all born entrepreneurs. Family and friends convince us that we're not entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur is the one who finds a way to remember what he always was." The most valuable and exciting aspect of this whole conversation about disruptive education, to me, it's not about how emerging technologies are allowing us to do the same things we've always done at a faster pace or in a cheaper way or in a way that's more efficient or convenient. For me, the most exciting aspect of this is that these emerging technologies are forcing us to revisit and re-examine our assumptions for why we pursue education in the first place. What is the value of education? What becomes of education when our capacity to memorize information, access data, orchestrate communities of learning becomes outsourced to an ever-widening array of emerging technologies? I contend that if we want to provide a constructive, compelling, and sustainable answer to that question, we have to adopt what I call an entrepreneurial pedagogy. We have to adopt an approach to learning that facilitates the process of self-discovery and that cultivates an attitude of self-determination. One of my favorite quotes comes from Seth Godin. Seth Godin said the following: "You're not going to get picked. Dick Clark has passed away. American Bandstand is not going to call and put you on the show. It's over. That world has ended. And it's being replaced by the scary but awesome responsibility of picking yourself." The work that I do the work that I do for three reasons. Number one, because I love ideas. For any of you who may read my humble blog, you'll know that my tagline is, "Ideas are my intoxication, philosophy is my psychedelic." Someone who takes psychedelics, what they do is they ingest substances for the purpose of inducing an altered state of consciousness that will help them cultivate an internal state of bliss. Well, I believe that concepts are something we can chew on. And when we chew on concepts, we can alter our state of mind and not only induce internal states of bliss, but radically impact our world. The second reason why I do what I do is because not only do I love ideas, but I believe that entrepreneurship is the optimal medium for empirically demonstrating the value of an idea. If you really want to know what an idea is worth, if you really want to know how useful it is, take that idea and engage reality with it. Attempt to create value for others. Attempt to solve problems within the context of an accountability structure rooted in profit and loss. Cal Newport, the author of So Good They Can't Ignore You, he also runs a blog called Study Hacks. He says the great thing about money is that nobody wants to give it to you. So when you ask people for money in exchange for something you do, you're going to get more honest feedback than ever before. If you say, "What do you think of my idea?" that what they tell you doesn't really mean anything until you say, "Hey, for $20, I'll sell you a book that expresses my idea." Then you're going to get really honest feedback. It's not what people say, it's not their stated preferences, it's what they actually do when scarcity and sacrifice are involved. The third thing is, I believe one of the fundamental aims of education is to cultivate that entrepreneurial spirit. I believe that we can no longer afford to treat entrepreneurs as if they are isolated figures limited to people who launch technology startups or people who own small businesses or people who are founding partners of large firms. I think the world is becoming an increasingly smaller space for those who don't see them as entrepreneurs. Now, for the sake of clarity, I make a distinction between being an entrepreneur and being entrepreneurial. Being an entrepreneur is someone who owns their own business. But being entrepreneurial is a way of thinking. It's an attitude that says, I do not see my world as a closed system in which all of the opportunities are pre-packaged, pre-existing opportunities that I have to fight and compete over. But I see my world as an open system, one in which I can introduce possibilities to that world, one in which I can produce effects that have never been seen, one in which I can manifest results that have never been achieved. Without this spirit, without this attitude, I do not believe we have the capacity to survive in the future. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to disrupt the conversation about disruptive education. I would like to shift the focus of that conversation from technology to philosophy. Because no matter how fast our technology gets, no matter how efficient we get at doing things, if we continue to do the same old things for the same old reasons without questioning our why, we just get better and better at futility. Michael Strong has a very awesome TED Talk that I encourage you all to watch. It's called Socratic Practice as Disruptive Technology. And one of the points he makes in that talk is that the most powerful disruptive technology is yourself. Something I would like to challenge you to think about. Are you approaching life from a pick-me perspective? Is your approach to creativity permission-based? And are we educating people to think and live in that way? The best advice I got was from one of my professors at Western Michigan University named Dr. Von Washington. He said to me, Tekoa, that's what TK stands for, he says, Tekoa, you're a good guy and you're a smart kid, but that won't buy you a cup of coffee in New York. And I never went to New York, so I went to LA because I didn't want to, but I found out, unfortunately, that was also true in LA. It's true in Austin. It's true everywhere you go. Being nice, being educated, doing what you're told, having the right credentials, doing all of the right things. There's nobody in this world. This is a harsh truth, but it's so good to get it into our minds. There's nobody in this world who's going to knock themselves over in order to help us out, in order to make us happy, in order to make us wealthy, in order to make us rich. And so we have to learn how to take responsibility for our lives and be the predominant creative forces in our own lives. And I suggest that we do not stop until we find a philosophy of education that honors that aspect of ourselves and that empowers us to give expression to that fact. Thank you.